So, you have come to Buildkite 101. I'm Nick Rycar. I'm a technical product marketing manager at Buildkite and your MC today. And the star of today's presentation will be...
Hi everyone, my name's Mike Morgan. I'm a customer engineer here in sunny Vancouver, Canada. And today I'm going to be running you through the Buildkite 101 session.
Right on. So real quick for folks, if Buildkite is new to you, you're definitely in the right place. And some high level of who we are. Buildkite is a platform for running fast, secure, and scalable continuous integration pipelines on your own infrastructure. Buildkite embraces a hybrid SaaS model where we combine the convenience of a hosted platform where we provide access control tools, pipeline management, and dashboards, but you have the security and flexibility of running your builds and tests behind your firewall. Your code never has to leave your servers, and you can mock things up in as close to a production environment as you need. Today, we'll be digging in on sort of the basics of Buildkite and how to get things rolling. So I'm going to go ahead and take a back seat and give the floor to Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so I should be able to share my screen, I think. Okay. Do you see my Buildkite screen?
Looking good.
Fantastic. All right. Okay. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to hop back here just for the purpose of illustrating one thing here. I'll start here. First of all, thank you to everyone for joining today's session. As you're probably aware, the title of this session is Buildkite 101. So we're going to use this time to walk through some of the fundamental concepts of Buildkite, show you some key features that you can use in your own pipelines, and hopefully give you a little inspiration about how you could improve your own workflows. So as the 101 implies, I mean, this is really going to be targeted at folks who perhaps haven't used Buildkite a whole lot before. Perhaps you're completely new and you want to know what it's all about. Perhaps you're watching this on YouTube in 6 months' time and you've just signed up for a trial and you need to figure out how pipelines work. Perhaps you're a day-to-day Buildkite user, and in which case I'm probably not going to be telling you anything you don't already know, but thanks for joining anyway, I guess. But during this session, basically what we're going to do is talk about how Buildkite works, how to deploy agents, how to integrate with your SCM, create a basic pipeline. We're going to touch on some more advanced pipeline features, plugins, and also some integrations as well. And not all of these subjects we're going to go terribly deep on, some deeper than others certainly, but really the goal here is that at least we can touch on them and leave you with at least the knowledge that they exist. And should you wish to implement them in your own pipelines, you can do a bit of digging from there. So just to kind of go back to something that Nick mentioned there. So the copy on homepage describes Buildkite as a platform for running fast, secure, and scalable CI pipelines in your own infrastructure, it's a pretty concise pitch of what Buildkite sets out to do. And why do engineers love Buildkite so much? Well, there's many reasons, but I've heard our co-CEO and founder Keith describe Buildkite as being like a bunch of Lego blocks on many an occasion. And by that, he means that you can assemble them in pretty much any way you require. And this is a really key concept to Buildkite. It's super unopinionated as to how you perform your builds. And it gives you a lot of freedom about how you go about things. So pretty much every step of the build process can be modified and customized if required. Furthermore, it's very easy to set up, very intuitive, and you can get it up and running in no time. There's no proprietary languages to learn. Honestly, if you can write some YAML, then you can use Buildkite. And if you're able to write some bash scripts, then you'll be a seasoned pro in no time at all. And as a customer engineer, I speak to new and existing customers every single day and constantly hear really great feedback about how these teams are able to use Buildkite to cut their build times from hours to minutes, or save them countless hours fighting with their existing build system. So one of the things that differentiates us from at least some other build CI platforms is that our hybrid SaaS model that we use, where the API and control planes are SaaS, and the agents that do the work are hosted by yourselves, like our customers. So the agents can be deployed absolutely anywhere, on-premise, in the cloud, can be bare metal, Docker, in Kubernetes, Mac, Linux, Windows, x86, Apple Silicon, ARM, you name it. It's a very versatile agent. And furthermore, Buildkite was actually the first CI provider to use this hybrid model. So we've got a lot of experience doing this, and we like to think that we're really good at it as well. So why is this model so good? Well, there's a few reasons that come to mind, such as security, performance, scalability, and cost as well. So to start off, I mean, as the agents, which are again hosted in your own environment under your control, are responsible for doing all of that build work, it means that the code that is checked out and the secrets that are used are not passed back to Buildkite. They're all handled by the agents themselves, and none of that sensitive information gets sent back to us. And that part is really, really important. I can't stress that enough, that we don't see your source code and we don't see your secrets. We have no idea what you're running, and we like it that way. It's a zero knowledge system. So you can safely deploy from Buildkite, and you can run all sorts of highly secretive IP inside Buildkite. All that we see are the logs and the exit status from the build. And because of this, when you're deploying Buildkite in your organization, it makes it a much easier conversation to have with your security team. In addition to that, you can choose what kind of infrastructure you deploy for the build agent. So, if you want to run your builds on the largest possible instance, then you can absolutely do that. If you want to build on the Graviton or Mac 1 Metal instances, then go ahead, that's absolutely fine. Rather than us selling you the compute resources at a premium, we allow you to take care of that. And we can scale to whatever degree that you need. We have customers running thousands or tens of thousands of agents simultaneously, and it's not a problem at all. So enough of the slides. Let's actually go into Buildkite and take a look at things. So we're going to run through some steps on how agents are deployed and how pipelines are set up now. But before I do that, it probably is worth framing it. Just the basic operation of a pipeline, the life cycle of a build. It goes something like this. A build is going to be triggered somehow, and that could be via a webhook from your SCM or through the UI or a scheduled build or whatever. And then this build gets put into a queue, and then an agent associated with your account, which again is running in your own environment, will be polling our API, monitoring that queue for work. And when it sees that there's work available, it will take that job, clone the repo, and then perform the build as it's dictated in your pipeline code. So with that in mind, first things first, you need some agents to actually do the build. So as I mentioned, the agents can be deployed pretty much anywhere. The agent itself is open source. It is written in Go. It's very lean and lightweight, both in terms of the amount of storage it requires, but then also the amount of CPU and memory it uses. And it can be built on more or less any platform supported by Go. It's a single binary with no dependencies, and it makes it very easy to package up and distribute when needed. So here you can see on our agents page, this is just my sandbox account, my agents page. I can see some quick start guides for deploying agents. I was contemplating deploying a Linux agent live on this call, but honestly, it's so straightforward. It doesn't really seem like a good use of time. You just follow these commands, and then you're good to go. The agent will pop up in your Buildkite account right away. I do have some more interesting things to show you around agents, but before I do, just worth mentioning, just because it's a conversation that comes up often during new trials or customers that are getting started, in terms of network policy, we sometimes get questions like, do I have to open any inbound ports to our network for Buildkite to connect to the agents or anything like that? And the answer is no, you don't have to do that. The agents poll our API on TCP 443, so that's pretty straightforward. That's all that's required. Additionally, the agents by default, they will monitor a default queue. So all work will go into that queue, and that's where the agents monitor. But you also have the ability to split the agents and pipelines out into separate queues as well. So it gives you a lot more granularity about how you assign work. So if you have like clusters of agents for certain teams or business units or applications, that's absolutely something you can set up. And that's definitely not a conversation for today, but just again, making you aware that it is a thing. That said, what I do want to take a look at on this call is this AWS button on the side here. So this takes us to something called the Elastic CI Stack. So the Elastic CI Stack is basically a CloudFormation template that gives you an extremely configurable auto-scaling cluster of build nodes in AWS. So it's can scale from anywhere from 0 nodes to hundreds or more when required. So as you have work for it to do, it will spin up instances and with agents in and do that those builds for you. So, you know, this kind of technology becomes especially useful when you're using some of the features in Buildkite, like being able to run steps in parallel, like fanning test suites out across hundreds of nodes simultaneously to reduce your build times rather than running everything in series. The Elastic CI Stack will be responsible for you know, firing up instances with the agent, processing the work, and then tearing everything down when required. And our customers really love it because of its simplicity of deployment, and it's also because you can configure it however you want, really. You know, if you want to run massive or tiny instance types, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. If you want to customize AMIs or use spot instances or whatever, then that's all behavior that you can configure. And you know, one of the big pluses here is that you're only paying for the compute time that you're actively using, you know, rather than a bunch of compute resources that are just sitting idle at any given moment. So it really helps to keep your CI costs as controlled and economical as possible. And in terms of how this is actually set up, really all I need to do is just get my agent token, click through. It takes me straight into, I'm already logged into AWS, but it'll take me straight into the CloudFormation stack deploy. And I can just kind of click through a few times and I'll have my Elastic CI stack up and ready to roll in just a few moments. Okay, so in this case, I've got some agents up and running now in my account. And the next thing to do is to get some pipelines running. So I've got something to build. Before I do, I mean, I mentioned a few moments ago, there's a few different ways that you can trigger builds. Just to recap on that, I mean, you can fire one off via the Buildkite UI, just go in there and kind of launch a build. You can trigger one using our API. We have a scheduler built in. So if you have like almost like cron builds or like nightlies or something like that that you want to schedule, that's absolutely fine. But in most cases, folks are going to be wanting to trigger builds from their SCM via webhooks, so that, you know, when a commit is made or a PR is raised or whatever, we will receive that webhook, and that's what triggers the build. So when you start your new Buildkite account, much like this one, you'll see that we have the option to integrate with your SCM. We have a number of these integrations right out of the box: GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, Bitbucket, GitLab. In this case, I'm going to use GitHub regular. And I just need to simply connect and choose my GitHub username. There's an additional step here. I think it's just because I've done this before in this account, it kind of skips it, the step where it takes me to GitHub and asks me to authorize. Of course, I'll just press yes. But at which point that integration is in place and I should be ready to move forward. So after I've set up my SCM integration, I'll be able to create a pipeline. So this screen is pretty self-explanatory, honestly. I can just give my pipeline a name. Because I've got that GitHub integration set up, I can choose one of my repos from my GitHub account. So I've got this UnblockConf21 that I set up. It's got some goodies in there. And I'm going to leave this auto create webhooks toggle enabled. So again, these are the webhooks that will fire off from GitHub to Buildkite that tell it to actually start a build. You can do this manually from within GitHub, and there's some various different things that you can configure in there, but just leaving this enabled, we'll go in and attempt to do that for you to kind of take some of the heavy lifting off you. The only other part to this is with actually defining some steps for my pipeline. I'm not actually going to do this right now. I'll explain why in a moment, but for the time being, I'm just going to create pipeline, and that's set up. So I have a pipeline, it's configured with a repo, and all I need to do now is edit steps to actually configure what happens when this build begins. So I want to give my pipeline some steps to execute. And we have two different ways that we can define pipeline steps. You might see that we have some legacy steps here, which is the older way. It's got like a UI-driven step editor. And the newer way, which is based on YAML, and it has a number of benefits. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to be using the YAML step editor. So I'm just actually going to convert this pipeline to YAML, and I'll be taken into the YAML editor like this. So when I do so, it kind of fleshes this out for me. It gives me a super simple pipeline to work with. So you'll see I have a steps block and then a single command statement here. So a command statement is basically going to be instructing my builder agent to run this whatever bash command that I give it here. And just to recap, the process is that when I hit start build, the agent will pick that job up, it will clone the repo, and then it's going to run whatever command I give it in the source directory of the repo just downloaded. So if I look in the repository here, it's pretty sparse. It's got a README, it's got a few Buildkite files in here that we'll look at in a moment. But using that logic, what I could do is something like if I just cat the README file, and this is really just to illustrate kind of the workflow. But if I cat the README file, save and build. Oh, I've got to make sure I'm using the right branch here. Then again, Buildkite will send this job to the agent. The agent will clone the repo and then dump out the contents of the README file in my build log here. So that's kind of a very high level and quick example of how the agent is going to, the workflow that it uses when it actually performs the build. And using that, we're actually going to dig a little bit deeper now and do some slightly more interesting stuff. So using the UI-based YAML editor is all well and good. But as power users of Buildkite, you'll want to move away from this and actually start storing pipeline definitions in the source repo itself. Number of benefits to this, of course. Your team can collaborate on the code. Everything is version controlled. You can have a number of different pipeline definitions ready to go in any repo. So you could have like dev, staging, prod, CD pipeline definitions for all these various use cases for a single application stored in its repo. Some CI tools have a one-to-one mapping between repositories and pipelines, but Buildkite is different in this regard. You can have as many pipelines as you want tied to a single repository. So, as I mentioned previously, Buildkite doesn't see your source code. So if we have like pipeline definitions stored inside my repository here, how is Buildkite going to read those pipeline definitions? Well, it's very simple. When the agent clones the repository when it starts the build job, we would just simply instruct the agent to send that pipeline file back to Buildkite, where it is processed and it's appended to the current build job. You see, all of the pipelines in Buildkite are dynamic. So if you upload steps during the pipeline execution, they're going to be added to the build job. And really, this opens up a lot of doors to do cool and interesting things with the way that you design pipelines. You no longer have to have a static pipeline at runtime. You can add and change things as you go. So to demonstrate this, again, I've got my repository, I've got a .buildkite folder, I've got some pipeline YAML in here. So instead of this, what I'll do is, today, pipeline upload. So by running the pipeline upload command, it's going to look in the Buildkite folder and upload a pipeline definition, that matches kind of the default naming. Now, I mentioned that we can have a number of different pipelines in a single repository, so that's something we can also specify manually if we want to. So I can go this, upload, okie dokie, and then all I need to do is save and build. And again, got to also remember to configure the correct branch. So again, the agent is going to clone the repository. It uploads the pipeline file in my repository back to Buildkite, and that additional pipeline file, as you can see, is like a hello world echo statement here that's then appended onto the end of the pipeline. So that is how you're able to take a file, a pipeline definition stored inside your repository, and then send that back to Buildkite for processing. And this is really like a glimpse at some of the dynamic pipeline functionality that we have, and we'll touch on that a little bit more detail in a moment here. But this is a very basic pipeline. This is like a very straightforward pipeline, and using this same logic, you can really chain together whatever commands you need to perform the build. If you're probably not going to be echoing hello world, but you might want to run make or Bazel build or whatever you need. Perhaps there's an application that's actually running present on the build node that you'd want to execute. Maybe you want to call the AWS CLI tool, or if like Docker is present, you want to run a linter inside a container against the contents of the repository, then that's absolutely fine. You would just call those in much the same way as you would from the command line. Cool. So we've looked at a command step so far. We've got a number of different types of steps that you can use to build out your pipelines, and the command step is just one of those. As I said, the command step, it really is just instructing the Buildkite agent to run a bash command. Very, very straightforward, but we have a number of other ones as well. So I'm going to use our great docs portal here just to illustrate some of those. Just to quickly list them, we have a wait step, which will pause the job until all previous steps have been completed. Block step, pausing execution of the build until someone comes into either the UI or via the API to unblock it. So this could be, maybe if you perform a build and you need someone just to kind of double check and sign off before we hit the deploy button and it pushes to production. Great, you can use a block step for that. The input step, kind of similar to a block step in so much as it halts execution, but rather than just okay or cancel, it's going to allow a user to input information into the pipeline. So it could be like a text field, or it could be like a selector. And this is completely freeform. You can dictate exactly what kind of information is collected here, and then this can then be used by subsequent steps in the pipeline. A trigger step can trigger other pipelines within your Buildkite account. And a group step. So the group step is basically, it allows you to group similar steps together into a single bucket. And this is both done grouped in the UI, but then also there's more of a logical grouping as well, because you can build step dependencies from that group. So you could say, step X is dependent on group Y completing. So it's a pretty powerful feature. And again, I'll show you this in a bit more detail. In fact, I do have an additional pipeline in my repository here, stepspipeline.yaml, that illustrates some of these in a bit more detail. So I just tweak my command here, so it sends that pipeline file back to Buildkite. You know what, actually as well, this is a good call out. Just might as well show you this, because in case it trips you up, you can set your default branch here. So in this case, I'm using main. I can just save that. It means I don't have to change it manually each time. Okie dokie. So save and build. I'm going to trigger this build. So what this is going to do, again, it's going to download the repo, upload the pipeline YAML back to Buildkite so it's appended to my build here. And it's got a couple of these different steps. So block step first. In this case, I can see the build is blocked. Boom. Do I want to unblock this? Sure. And then it's going to ask me for input. So in this case, I put a text box and a selector. And so in this case, this repetitions part. So this is actually, I'm showing off some of the dynamic pipeline functionality here. Not only am I going to reuse the data that I'm putting in here, but whatever input I put in terms of repetitions, I'm going to dynamically generate the next step of the pipeline to repeat hello Mike back to myself however many times I choose. So this is something that's generated via a script inside my repository that I'm calling. So I can say, for example, 3 repetitions, I accept, and it should repeat that back to me 3 times. So again, the purpose of this is really just to show you that how all these things start chaining together. I can have inputs, I can start dynamically generating steps. I mean, this is extremely flexible and you can get it to more or less behave exactly as you want. Remember, a bunch of Lego blocks. So dynamic stuff is really outside the scope of a 101 walkthrough, but it's important enough I at least wanted to mention it, show that it's a thing so that you can kind of become aware of it and perhaps think about how you can use it in your own pipelines. Okay, so I want to touch on secrets management real quick. As I've said before, Buildkite is extremely unopinionated about how you do things. That's really our mantra here. But that said, there's one area that we have a pretty strong opinion, and that opinion is you should not put any secrets inside your pipelines. Please don't do this. It means don't store secrets in pipeline settings or secrets in pipeline YAML, or reference secrets directly in your pipeline YAML, because doing that exposes your secrets to Buildkite, which is absolutely something that none of us want to happen. And remember, the fact that none of this stuff makes it back to Buildkite is the reason that security teams love us. So please definitely don't do that, because it makes them mad and then it makes all of our jobs harder. So instead, we would say that you should use a secret storage service like AWS Secrets Manager or HashiCorp Vault. You can interact with these services directly from your pipeline. And we also have plugins as well. And we haven't touched on plugins yet, but I'll give you a peek in a moment. But plugins can integrate with these or other similar services to handle the way that secrets are used in your pipelines. And we also can have some guidance around using secrets as an environment hook, which is kind of means the secrets are kept on your machine and you have control of them. And it means that you can very much conditionally choose where they're exposed in your pipelines. Okay, so there's one slightly more advanced feature that I wanted to touch on here. And the reason I want to touch on this is it comes up a great deal during implementation, and as customers are trying to figure out how to best use Buildkite in their own environment, and that is the concept of agent hooks. I'm not going to dwell on this for too long, but just spend a moment again just to let you know that it's a thing and what it does, and then should you be in a situation where they might be useful, and at least you'll know that they're there. And Buildkite, agent hooks absolutely falls into like a more advanced feature. It gives you the ability to insert basically a shim at multiple stages throughout the build lifecycle for each individual build job, and modify Buildkite's out-of-the-box behavior. You can customize and replace or extend like pretty much any behavior during this build process. And as you can see, like these hooks exist throughout the life cycle of a build job. And depending on what hook you need to modify, you can keep your hook scripts in either actually in the agent folder or in the repository that you're cloning, or using a plugin as well. And there's no demo to show off here because it's not really a demo-y thing. But examples of the usage might be that if you have let's say some additional repos that need to be cloned after the initial repo has been cloned for the pipeline, you could absolutely use a post-checkout hook to do that. Or perhaps you need to completely replace the default checkout behavior. That's absolutely fine. You can use a checkout hook for that. Another case would be if we're dealing with like things like financial organizations or teams that have very strict compliance rules, there might be a need to run these additional like strict checks when any single job is executed. So for example, like enforcing which commands or which plugins are allowed to run. And in these cases, you have a pre-bootstrap hook that can be used to do this. And again, I don't want to spend any more time on hooks, but other than to say that it is a very useful thing to have, a useful tool to have at your disposal. And it, again, absolutely fits in with that whole building block mantra for Buildkite that I mentioned earlier. If you have a specific need, you need the product to behave in a certain way that it doesn't seem to out of the box, then just keep hooks in mind, because there's a fairly good chance they'll need to be able to get you where you need to be. And I would encourage you, if that's the case, definitely reach out to us, either myself or support, or we'll try and guide you in the right direction there. Okay, so what next? We have a couple more things I want to touch on before the end, real quick here. So plugins and integrations as well. So if you've used Buildkite at all, you're probably aware about plugin capabilities. A plugin is basically a Git repository that contains some hooks which extend the agent's behavior. So I just go here, plugin directory, lovely. Because everything's, the plugins are basically Git repositories. Everything is open. Everything's versioned. You know exactly what the plugin is going to be doing. It's really easy to read and understand. It gives you the ability to fork or host your own plugins yourself. And you can even put strict controls around exactly which plugins are going to be allowed to be used in your environment as well. And really, plugins can be anything from a single command or a very simple plugin that does one thing in particular, or some folks are building their library plugins that do a whole lot of things. It's kind of like a toolbox plugin that has a ton of different functions that are maybe specific to their organization. You just import that. You can use that inside your pipeline steps. And in terms of where do we get these pipeline plugins from? You can look at our plugin directory. In this case, I got there from our docs portal, but you could just Google that. And for example, if I search for something, we'll be able to see all the various different plugins that we offer for that particular keyword. Some of these plugins are built and maintained by us. Others are built in conjunction with customers, and some are entirely third party and built entirely by our customers. And you're absolutely welcome to write your own plugins and submit them to this plugin directory for everyone to use. And for any one of these, if we click through, in this case, looking at the Docker one, it's almost certainly our most popular plugin. Gives users the ability to run builds inside a nice kind of clean room container environment. We're taken to its Git repo. I can see all the instructions here, how to use it, all the information you need, and how to actually put this into your pipelines. And as I mentioned, you can build your own. And if you have the need to do that, I would say take a look at our docs portal. We give you this great step-by-step tutorial about actually how to assemble these plugins. Okay, so we're almost on the home stretch now. Last thing I want to touch on real quick is integrations, because the chances are that Buildkite isn't the only tool that you're using in your environment. I imagine that there's going to be a number of other pieces of software you use day to day, and you'll probably want some sort of degree of integration between these. And the good news is that we're able to facilitate that. So, I mean, of course, you could use plugins. So, you can integrate with any number of different tools in your pipelines using, the plugins, AWS, Docker, Kubernetes, Vault, the sky's the limit, really. But we also provide some integrations outside of the plugin or pipeline context. So first of all, I want to show you, we've got single sign-on. Honestly, not the most glamorous subject generally, but I like to think that our SSO is what I would describe as the best in breed implementation of SSO you'll find. Really easy to set up. We have support for really a number of the top SSO providers like Okta, and, AD and Google, as well as generic SAML. You can set up multiple SSO. If you have several different SSO providers in play, then you can use a couple of them. And we don't limit this just to our enterprise customers. So anyone who has a Buildkite account can use SSO. That said, we do have some nice enterprise specific SSO features such as SCIM deprovisioning for Okta and Azure AD that you might be interested in. If that's the case, let us know. We can help you out with that. We also integrate with Slack. I mean, like most companies these days, you're probably big users of Slack internally. And if so, we have our own Slack application that you can use to send build notifications directly to your Slack channels. Similarly, we have integrations with PagerDuty. We're huge Basecamp users over here at Buildkite, so we have a built-in Basecamp integration. Of course, you have email notifications, Datadog integration. If you want to start building things yourself, then you can write notifications to an EventBridge queue, fire off webhooks to a URL of your choosing that you can be received and processed however you like. And then just to kind of wrap things up, it's also worth mentioning, we do have extensive APIs for really, any of the data that's within your Buildkite account. So if you have that need to take that build data, put it elsewhere, store it, manipulate it, you can manage the entire platform via the API as well. It's not just for retrieving data. Then you can also manage the service as well. We have REST APIs and a GraphQL API. And I would absolutely encourage you to take a look at our GraphQL console. We've got, as you can kind of see from the screenshot, built-in GraphQL Explorer. You can read the documentation, fire off queries, and perform actions directly from this web UI. It's really cool. So that was a lot of information for 37 minutes, or maybe even slightly less. But just to recap, and when we looked at what Buildkite is and how it works, how agents work, how to set the basic pipeline, and some of the perhaps slightly less basic pipeline-y things, and then some best practices, notifications, secrets, plugins, and probably a few other things that I've forgotten as well. So with that, I'd like to hand back to Nick.
Mike, so good. Excellent. So I hope folks enjoyed. That was a lot to take in, but you can see it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to things you can do. This is the second to last webinar today. We have one more for you at the top of the hour. We're going to have folks from Flare and Lodal join us to talk about using Bazel with EC2 Mac. So another EC2 Mac session for folks. Please join us. Of course, if you have any questions, we'll be here for another couple minutes. Feel free to throw them in the Q&A. And this session will be available on demand. So if you came in late, you won't miss anything. Don't worry. If you've registered, we'll send you an update when that on-demand session is available. Righty. Thanks again, Mike. That was amazing. Hey.
No problem. Thanks, Nick, and thanks everyone for coming along. Really appreciate it.